Hello guys, welcome into another FIFA 23 video for you today. A little bit different from the tactics videos. I have got version 2.0 of my FIFA 23 custom sliders for you guys. And I want to take you through not only the sliders, but also the best match settings, the best rules, the best controller settings, and a whole lot more to make sure that you have not only an exciting experience, but a more realistic and entertaining experience as well. For those of you who did miss it, this is kind of a build on from version 1.0 of my previous sliders that we did a few months ago. We've tweaked those ones since, and I do believe the gameplay is playing better since then with version 2.0 of these sliders. If you haven't done so already, before we get into it, let me quickly remind you to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notifications every time I upload, and check out my Patreon where you can get access to lots of fantastic rewards like exclusive tactics videos and FIFA 23 tactics package with rankings and ratings of every system we cover on the channel, as well as Discord server access, behind the scenes videos, early access to videos, and a whole lot more. With that being said, let's talk about these settings. So I'm actually going to do this video in a different order today. With the last video, we decided to do the sliders first. This time, I'm going to go through the controller settings first because I have a very, very important notice for you all. A lot of people in the last video obviously didn't watch until the end or just didn't really want to hear it. And so we're going to go through it at the start this time. If you're finding these sliders too easy on world class mode, and a lot of people who obviously didn't watch kind of said, how is world class? That's too easy. If you're finding them too easy, you must switch to manual controls. That is how you get more difficulty, but also more realism from playing on world class. And we'll talk about why you need to play on world class a little bit later. So for example, going through my controller settings very quickly, auto clearances, flare pass, auto shots, assisted headers, all off. And then we go down a bit further. Through pass assistance is currently on semi. I'm currently working towards manual controls as well. The best thing for you to do is obviously going from assisted, switch everything to semi or switch some things to semi-assisted, then go full semi, and then obviously work your way from there. So we're going down the list a little bit more. Ground pass assistance is on semi, shot assistance is manual, cross assistance semi, lob pass assistance, and lob through pass assistance all on manual. And so as a result, it just makes a much more challenging, realistic experience. You actually have to think about what you're doing. It's so easy for FIFA players to kind of just go on autopilot and just kind of, everything's too easy. Everything really is too easy. All the most unrealistic passes, unrealistic shots, etc. And this completely changes the ball game for you. So you must switch to manual if you find world class too easy on assisted controls. Also worth mentioning, other settings that I make sure are on or off. Competitive master switch, make sure that that is turned off, as well as timed finishing. Again, that's a little bit of rubbish in all honesty, so I wouldn't kind of switch with that one. With regards to the match settings, first and foremost, with the half length, we've got this on 6 minutes now. In the previous video, I told you guys to go for something like 4 or 5 minutes because ultimately there's too many goals in FIFA and you need to try and decrease how many are scored. This time with these sliders, I feel like we're at a point where there are less goals being scored now, so we can increase that half length a little bit more. You want really greater half length times and obviously less goals. So we've gone for 6 minutes. I think you can tinker with this, maybe go for something 7, 8 or 5, etc. But that's really what you're looking for. With the difficulty level, here's why you should have it on world class rather than legendary or ultimate. On world class, the AI actually plays more realistically, the opposition AI. For example, when they get the ball in the wide areas, you'll notice that they cross the ball in a whole lot more. On legendary or ultimate, what they'll do is they'll get the ball into the corner and without fail, they'll cut back inside and pass it along the face of goal to players who are on the edge of the box or inside the box. And that is how they attack every single time. Very, very brain numbing to play against constantly and very, very repetitive, not very realistic. With world class, they do mix it up a bit more. They just play a little bit more realistically. They will cross more balls in. And that is ultimately a huge part of football, and it will always be. So as a result, I think you should definitely play this on world class, and you get the difficulty from those manual controls that we spoke about earlier, as well as these sliders, which we'll go into shortly. Player-based difficulty, I personally have on. Again, personal preference. It's really, what it does is that it will target like 2 or 3 players for the opposition team. You'll notice arrows above their heads, kind of like grey arrows if you do have that setting switched on. And they kind of just play more intelligently. They will spot better. Well, more difficult passes, they'll try and play more difficult passes, they'll just generally be better. And the game really tries to identify some star players on the team, and so that's what it's doing there. Its selection process still leaves a little bit to be desired. I've mentioned it in the past where I played against Juventus, and Cuadrado was one of the star players. So that one was a little bit weird, but I'd definitely advise you to have it on. With the game speed, you should also have this on default as well. Last year in FIFA 22, we constantly had this on slow. However, the reason why I think you want this on default is because you'll actually find that the defenders don't actually defend. You'll find that they don't man markers easily. They get caught in jockeying animations. It's very, very frustrating, and it really did kind of hinder my, I guess, enjoyment of the gameplay last year. On default settings, unfortunately, still a little bit too fast, but much better than on slow. Finally, with the rules, before we get into the sliders, this is what I have. I have the refereeing strictness on strict, and then I have the handball on except penalties. The game doesn't do a very good job of distinguishing what handball is and isn't. Basically, if it hits your hand, it is a foul, and that can be very frustrating, particularly if it's penalties. The reason why I've got this on except penalties though is just so you can really get more set pieces, more free kicks, because I feel like that, even with the refereeing strictness on strict, there isn't enough of that, particularly with the opposition AI. So we have that on except penalties. Let's talk about the sliders then. I know that's what you've all been waiting for. So first things first, with the sprint speed and acceleration, this was on 48 in version 1. This is now on 46 for both the CPU and the user. This is the lowest that you can get it before it feels like they're getting stuck in mud with regards to the acceleration. You can mess with the sprint speed for sure, but the acceleration is the one that really changes this. This on 46 is absolutely, in my opinion, the lowest you can have before it does feel really, really bad. So we've got this on 46. The shot error for the user is on 65, and for the CPU is on 56. Now, it's also worth bearing in mind that, for me personally, I don't do a lot of regular shots on FIFA. I like to do a lot of finesse shots, mixing some power shots as well. Often, I don't do a lot of kind of manual shots, so this only affects that. So if you're someone who does more manual shots and less kind of finesse and other types of shots, then you might want to tweak that as is personal to you. But for me, I've got this on 65 with the user, the CPU on 56, just to tweak it up and make it a little bit more kind of difficult. And then with the pass error, 58 for the CPU, 60 for the user. Not a whole lot of differences with regards to that, but the only reason I've got it a little bit higher is, again, just to give you a little bit more difficulty. Shot speed is on 48. This one, I believe, is the same from version 1.0. And then the pass speed was on 42 last time. I've upped this a tad just to 44 because I noticed that often passes were kind of getting, again, caught in the mud, for want of a better phrase. And as a result, I kind of upped this a little bit just to make sure that it felt a little bit more free-flowing, whilst not making it too high so that it become really ping-pongy and the pace of the game is getting too big. Injury frequency and severity, these stay on 1750 from the last video. Again, I had some people who were like, there was one guy who commented on my last video and he was like, I've got 1 injury after 7 games. This injury frequency needs to be decreased. I was like, mate, 1 injury after 7 games, like that needs to be increased more than anything. Like, injuries happen in every game. And so ultimately you need to be experiencing a regular amount of injuries. I think this probably could still be increased, but for now we're sticking with 70, and I think you do get a fair level of injuries. Goalkeeper ability is 50 for the user, and then 56 for the CPU, just again giving you a little bit of added difficulty without making it too ridiculous. The marking still on 68, that's the same as version 1. And then the run frequency, this has been tweaked a little bit. With the CPU, you'll see it's on 50, but for the user, it's on 15. We've decreased this a little bit because ultimately, as the user, you'll be altering your tactics so that you'll get players running in behind. You'll probably have forward runs on in a lot of systems. And so you can kind of increase that run frequency anyway, whereas the CPU, generally a lot of their systems are on balance and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So we keep this on 50, but have this on 15 for you so that it becomes less end-to-endy, it becomes more possessionally orientated, but you still do have that element of kind of penetrating runs in behind, movement. Otherwise, it would become too stagnant. But if you obviously are doing the custom tactics, you can have this on 15. Line height has changed this time. It's on 70 for the user, 50 for the CPU. Again, only on 50 for the CPU because you're going to be exploiting those balls in behind too much. Whereas for the user, you kind of want to boost the block up, and I've noticed this is still an issue. The block isn't high enough, so I decided to boost this from version 1.0 of the sliders. The line length is on 40 this time for both the CPU and the user, and then the line width remains on 50. With the fallback positioning, it's again 50 for the user, because again, you can kind of alter that with your tactics. Whereas with the CPU, this was decreased to 45, just a tad, because ultimately I found that there was a little bit too much room for my wingers to get in behind. And I kind of found the CPU fallbacks a bit MIA, missing in action, so to speak. So we went with 45 for that. And then the power bar on the user customization is on 56 for me. Again, that's obviously personal preference. And then first touch control area at 90 for the user. I'm pretty sure that's the same as version 1.0, and it's gone up to 70 for the CPU. Again, trying to make it more realistic with more first touch error, so that you can't try kind of the most unrealistic of passes and first touches, etc., and really get away with that. So it's meant to kind of punish you a little bit more, but not make it so that it's at a ridiculously high level. And with that being said, that would just about round it off for these slider settings. If you've got any kind of questions or any suggestions for improvements or changes to the slider, any questions about the sliders, then please do let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. As I mentioned at the start of the video, if you want to get access to the likes of exclusive Patreon videos, FIFA 23 custom tactics package with rankings and ratings of every video that we cover on the channel, as well as behind the scenes videos, early access to videos, Discord server access, a whole range more, then check out my Patreon. The links to that are down below, as is the link to my Twitter. Give me a follow on there. And with that being said, we're going to round it off there. Subscribe to the video and ring the bell to get notifications every time that I upload a video. And with that being said, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.